Test, 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 test. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this very first State of the University address. I want to take just a moment to start and say a special thank you to Eric and to Liz, who will be providing sign language interpretation today. Thank you both. And I'd like to say a special thank you to Brandon, Mike, and the rest of the DMC for providing all of the audio and visual today. Unfortunately, this is live, so they can't edit if I say something stupid, but I was hoping that they would be able to do that. Especially because my wife, Diana, and her family from Colorado, my mom and dad and their family in Florida are all live streaming this. So by the way, throw fastballs when it's Q&A time. I want to say a special thank you to Chanel and the team from Aladdin for providing all of the refreshments today. I want to thank our hosts here at the Stevenson Union for allowing us to use the space. And then lastly, I want to say a special thank you to, we have several Board of Trustees members who are here, and so I want to acknowledge them now. I know we have Trustee Thorndike here, we have Trustee Henyon here, we have Trustee Rosenberg here, and I'm going to take a special moment. We have Trustee Piper here, who, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, is actually spending a little part of her birthday here with us. So happy birthday. Now the pressure's really on to make this interesting. So again, thank you so much for being a part of this. I will not speak for an hour and 45 minutes. That's my birthday gift to you. Because I want to spend some time with questions and answers. I want to give you that opportunity to really make this a dialogue as we move forward. It's why you'll see no slides. This is not a presentation. This is a conversation. And so purposely, I wanted to be a little bit different with how we did this. So I've structured the speech today on 3 things and 3 O's to make it easier for my feeble brain to comprehend. I want to start with observations, and then I want to discuss some opportunities, and finish with outreach. And they're all woven together. And I think then they'll spark the conversation that I think we need to have moving forward. So let me start with observations. So I've been here almost 4 months. The question I have received more than any other is, what do you think? What do you think about the place? What do you think about us? What do you think about the region? So it's a really long question, multi-part question. What were you surprised about when you got here? They're all related. And so I have to, it's a story that I have to share to answer that question. I knew that I was very fortunate to be given an opportunity to do this job. I recognize, I will never take that for granted. But there were some things that I didn't know when I first got here that I now know, and I will tell you that all of the things I've discovered have only made me more in love with this place and this institution. So Sue's heard me say this probably more times than she wants, but I'm going to share this story because the answer to the question, the thing about which, not that I was surprised, but I just didn't fully understand it, is the caliber of the team. That's the thing that I knew this was a talented place. I knew we had incredible people here, but I didn't fully understand it till I got here. Let's start with students. So, yes, Gabby. So, obviously, it was the priority. I mentioned when I first got here that I wanted to do strategic listening. I wanted to take some time and really visit with all of the stakeholders. That's ongoing. I haven't gotten to where I need to be. I haven't reached everyone here yet, but I plan to. But the very first goal was to meet with students. And so it was second day here, went to the Hawk, had dinner with students. The wonderful thing about our students is, and a lot of you know this, there's no filter. They will tell you exactly what they are thinking. And for a chief executive officer, you can't put a value on that. It is so powerful because they will tell you exactly what they're thinking. And what I've come to know, and obviously I've spent a lot of time with SOU, the student leadership, but really to a person, every student I have met here, they're engaged, they're intellectually curious, they're excited to be here, and they pay it forward. All of them are thinking about what comes next for the students who follow them. And as a university president, I cannot ask for better than that. Good example. The students, and I don't know how long ago, 10 years ago, maybe more, self-imposed a fee to help transform the energy profile at this institution. How many colleges or universities in the country can claim that? They have led us in this dialogue. And it's their leadership that has provided, for me, the North Star for where we go. So students really are leading the way. Faculty, this is the SOU story. So she was so gracious, Provost Walsh was so gracious to go with me around and meet every academic division that we have. And the faculty were so gracious to give their time. And as we sat in these rooms, we went around and every professor would say, I'm so-and-so, here's what I teach, here are some of my research interests, and I've been here for 5 years. I came from this area. And then others would say very similar things, and I've been here 16 years. I've been here 23 years. I've been here 28 years. You start to see the trend. And it was I was off balance a little. I wasn't used to that. And this was probably after the third or fourth division we were in. I was sitting in Sue's office one-on-one, and I said, Sue, it's really interesting. There are several professors here who have been here for a long time. Some of them actually said, yeah, I've been here for this long, and I remember I've taught students, and then decades later taught their kids, right? That was really interesting to me. And so I'm talking to Sue, this is really interesting. And then she says the epiphany line. She says, yeah, Rick, it's not uncommon for students here in a freshman class to be taught by a full professor. And that's when the light went off for me. And I'm going to talk about junior faculty too. So let me not take away from them. I have to be careful because I know we're being live streamed and I know everyone's recording this. So I'm going to be careful, but, and also because I am now friends with all of the other university presidents in Oregon. But it will not be a shocker to you that if you travel to some other institutions in this state in a freshman chemistry class, for example, you'll be taught in an auditorium with 400 other students, likely being taught by a graduate student who's not much older than many of the students in the room. And that's not bad, but that's not us. That's not who we are. I've had the opportunity now twice, thanks to Neil and his team, to give a few remarks at Preview Day. Preview Day is where we have 300-ish or more students, and prospective students, and their families who come from all over, Hawaii, California, Washington, all over, to Ashland to really see if SOU is a good fit. And that's the story I share. That's the story I share because all of the other stuff, the beauty of this valley, all of the great things that we have to offer, if I have to give one selling point to this place, it's the caliber of the education that students get here. And I think we do, and by the way, of course I'm biased, and of course I brag about this university for a living, but this is serious. I know that we do that better than anybody. I'm sure of it. So now it's just sharing that story, right? And everything else is gravy. By the way, when I talk about this at Preview Day, prospective students are interested, but they also want to know about athletics and the arts and all the other things. The rec center, all that stuff is great. But the parents in the room, when I talk about the quality of the education, I know they get it. And a lot of them are paying for it. So, it's important. So I've talked about students and faculty. And again, let me talk about junior faculty. For every one of those, professors who have been here for 28 years, there's also someone who's been here for 28 months. And they are just as talented and excited and student-centered and heart-centered, and so we need to celebrate them too. Now, here's where the institution comes into play, right? Because if we play our cards right, we're going to talk about fiscal, all that stuff later, ideally, all of those faculty members want to follow in the footsteps of those who have been here for decades, right? We need to create the environment where they know that this is a place where they can spend the next 30 years. So that's a challenge for us, but I know we're up to that challenge. Okay, so students and faculty, let me talk for a moment about staff. I said something on my very first day. I think it was my first day. I did a 5-on-5 interview for KOBI and mentioned the staff, and I said something that I thought might be controversial, and luckily it wasn't, and that is every staff member, in my opinion, at this university is an educator. Every one of them. And it doesn't matter what they do. Now, it may not be as formal as the education that happens in the classroom, absolutely. But if we don't think that students are watching everything that we do, we have to understand we're modeling behavior all the time. And a lot of us have interactions with students, right? Gabby, who is the president of ASSOU, she probably knows my worst flaws. She's too kind to say them, but we've spent enough time that she knows, right? And if I'm not thinking about how I'm modeling leadership with her, then I'm doing her a disservice, right? But everyone, I'm looking at Leon in facilities, IT, student services for sure. We all have interactions with students. So it's an opportunity for us to contribute to a very holistic educational picture. Here's the good news. Every staff member I've met here, and by the way, I'm still working on it, takes that to heart. Every staff member I've met here is completely committed to student success and understands their role in student success, no matter what they do. And again, as a chief executive, could not ask for better. Because now we have a foundation. All of us are united on student success. Now it's in the details about how we do it. So, very long answer to the question. By the way, now I have a captive audience, so I can give that long answer. But in terms of observations and the caliber of the team, that is the thing about which I am most excited, is the opportunity to be of service with all of you. While we're talking about observations, let me share what I would call perceptions and misperceptions. So Gene Stallman and I went to Salem. I think I'd been on the job a couple of weeks. And we had a chance to meet with government leaders, state legislators, and I want to make sure I'm careful. Again, no names. But there is a perception, especially as we get farther and farther away from Southern Oregon. I have heard from more than one person that there is a perception, I'm going to paraphrase now and combine in the aggregate, that SOU is that liberal, hippie, commune school in Ashland. Some of you, probably the ones who are giggling, have heard that too, right? So again, observations. There's no question there are students, faculty members, and staff members at this institution who are very liberal, very progressive. But at the same time, I have met students, faculty, and staff who are fairly conservative. And, shocker, they're all good people. And they all want good things. They just have different political views. That's it. And so I'm going to work really hard at celebrating that we are an institution that protects a marketplace of ideas. Some of you have heard me say this before. I think I said this during my interview to get this job, that I think there are two places in society where we should be able to create a space where we have respectful dialogues about issues, especially issues upon which we don't always agree. The first are legislative assemblies, right? Because they're writing laws, right? There should be a discussion about that. And we can save it till after the camera's off for how good nationally we're doing on that. The other is higher ed. That's the other place where we should have these conversations. And everything that I have seen so far, and we can talk about recent incidents if you like in Q&A, everything that I have seen so far reflects an institution with people who are committed to that, committed to having that conversation. Let me say this, because we have heroes and sheroes in uniform here. I spent the majority of my adult life wearing a uniform that symbolized my willingness to put my life at risk, to give others the opportunity to speak about things about which I don't agree, and even to sacrifice my life for it. So it's personal to me. It's personal to them. And so to be in an environment where we can celebrate that it's okay that we don't always agree on things, but at least let's have a healthy dialogue about it, that's not just good for SOU, that's good for the state, that's good for the country, and we need to protect that. And everything I've seen so far here celebrates that. And that's great. For our students, they are going to leave this place and they are going to be in environments with people who don't always agree with them. And so the more we practice that here, the better for them and for us. Okay. Opportunities. Thank you, Liz. If I had slides, this next part, I would have shown a slide that a lot of you have probably seen 100 times that shows a 10-year view of SOU's enrollment and what it's done over 10 years. Like, let me do this for the camera. Some people would see that, understandably, and freak out. And I get that. That is real. That is real. And we have to own that, and we have to understand that. The question is, what do we do about it? This is where opportunities come in. So let me share another statistic, and it's great to have Sherry here because I know she'll check me on the math. Right now, guess, where does Oregon rank in the percentage of high school graduates who go directly into college? Any guess? 43rd. That was not a plant. Greg actually knows it. 43rd. Out of all 50 states, we are, I was going to do the math and say 7th from life, but that might, we're almost last in students who go. So now, opportunity. We have two choices when we think about enrollment. We have two choices. We can spend our time coming up with excuses and give the woe is us and we have an enrollment cliff coming, or we can look at where the opportunities are and start to invest our time and energy into solving it. So you've all read, there are fewer students in high school nationwide, and that means there are going to be fewer. Absolutely, right? Let's accept that. But when you're 43rd as a state in students who go directly, well then, isn't that room for opportunity? I would be saying something very different right now if in Oregon, every high school student right after graduation goes into college. If that was 100%, then I would say, wow, we have a challenge because there's just not going to be as many students who do it. But when you're 43rd in the country, it means there are a lot of students right now who are graduating high school and aren't finding a path to higher education. That's an opportunity. I want to give kudos to Neil and his team. You've probably seen very recently a partnership arrangement that we made with the Medford School District, data sharing arrangement. It was followed very quickly afterwards by a data sharing agreement with Ashland Public Schools. And it's not rocket science. By the way, I was a astro engineering sciences undergrad, so I can tell you, it's not rocket science. There are students out there who never get contacted by any college or university. And by the way, SOU is not for all of them. We'll accept that. But I guarantee that there are students out there that if we reach out to them, they're going to think about us. And what Neil and his team have put into place is something revolutionary that on its face is not that revolutionary. It's pretty simple. All we're doing now is sharing data so that we can outreach to students, and especially students who maybe are underrepresented in higher education. That's really exciting. I am a first-generation college student. My wife was the first person in her family to go to college. And I will tell you what, coming from a family where that's kind of a new thing, when there were colleges as a sophomore and junior who started to send me things, that was a big deal. Because I had imposter syndrome, and I wasn't sure if this was for me. But when colleges reached out to me and said, yeah, this is for you, and there is a home here for you, that's what this is. We are going to reach out to students like we've never done before to say, there is a home here at SOU for you, if you want. We're doing things with community colleges that are very different. We're changing the dialogue, not to say, what can you do? This is almost a John F. Kennedy. Community colleges, not what can you do for us, what can we do for you? What are the things we need to do to make it easier? And we have a lot of students who have transferred and are not shy about sharing some of the challenges, right? We're doing a lot of things really well, but there are things we can do better. And so as we've met with community colleges, we've started to ask those questions, and they have been incredibly receptive to the things that we're doing. Opportunity. The second chart I would have shown you would show transfer students from community colleges and what's that's done over time. Shasta College, after Rogue Community College, it's not coincidental that the very next trip I wanted to go on was down in Redding, California. Right now there are 53 Shasta College graduates who are current SOU students. 53. Shasta College is a school of 6,000, 2 hours away. Can we do better than 13 a year? Yeah. Opportunity. So we're going to design it so that they know that we are a partner. And by the way, we're not stopping there. We're going to reach out to every community college in this state. We're going to go beyond. And we're very quickly going to become, and I think we're already starting to get there, as that's a school that's thinking differently about it. And we want to work with them. That's going to pay dividends. It might not happen overnight, but it's going to pay dividends. Okay. This doesn't happen in a bubble. And so I really want to give a lot of kudos to our faculty in the things that they are doing to help this challenge. And they've been leading this way for a long time. One good example, they are reimagining, really transforming general education. And I think we're going to go live on that in fall of next year, and we're going to be an outlier. We're going to stand out because of the work that Andrew Gay and the rest of that task force has done for the last 2 years now. In addition, and by the way, we just came from a Board of Trustees committee meeting, I just wanted to share a couple of programs that are either approved or in the process. A major in sustainable tourism management, a major in music industry and production studies, which was topic today. Certificate in environmental communication, restorative justice, sport and recreation management, minor in marketing. All of these things that, again, make us attractive, not just in the region, but where others outside the region say, hey, SOU is really committed to those things. And the faculty have been leading that innovation in ways that I think are going to make our job easier as we sell the things that we do and the things that we're committed to. Okay, I want to talk about fiscal long-term sustainability. And every time that comes up, I can sense that people start to crouch and get a little weird, and I get it. when I show you that chart, right, tuition is a part of our bottom line. So when tuition drops, that's a challenge for us. Now, we're working on it, and I'm pretty confident that even in this environment, we're going to start to see dividends from it. But it is a real fiscal challenge. So I think there are 4 things that we have to do that will help us transform our fiscal sustainability. And by the way, and again, this is where kudos come in, to Greg, to everyone on the team who thinks about budgets, how diligent they have been over time and how diligent all of you have been, because everyone has had to sacrifice to get there. They have made a difference, a huge difference. Otherwise, we'd be in a much worse situation right now, I'm sure of it. But that conversation has to continue. We are going to have conversations about cost management. We are. And I don't want people panicked. I don't want people freaked out. But I will make a couple of pledges. 1, decisions will not happen in a vacuum. It's not going to be a backdoor, a backroom discussion. These are things we will talk about as a community. And secondly, as the chief executive, I will take responsibility for it. All of it. As the chief executive, it's my job to do that. And so we're going to have those discussions. But the other 3 planks of this are going to be done in an effort to try and change the picture. And this is one of the things that we talked about when I first got here. Revenue. So the 20th century model of higher education, public higher education, says we rely on 2 things: state funding and tuition. State funding, as you know, does this over time. And by the way, that's not a poke in the eye of state legislators. That's the nature of state budgets. And so they're constantly struggling with that. And the other is tuition. And so we do have this reality where there are rising costs. The cost of everything has gone up. So what do universities do in response? They pull the one lever that they can pull. They pull the tuition lever. Now, let me say very clearly, SOU has done this better than anybody, certainly better than anyone in Oregon, in my opinion. I think SOU has been so conscious about being very careful about tuition. But I will say this, if we do nothing, if we kind of stay the course, then the only thing we're going to have left is to pull that tuition lever, and I'm not going to let that happen. We're not going to let that happen, because I know that's not what you want either. So we're going to be creative. So the question is, can we do more than those 2? And I think the answer is yes. So especially because my dad is watching, let me share a very brief interlude. When my dad was a little kid, I have to be careful on age because he was probably violating child labor laws. But he lived in Washington, D.C., and he worked for a company called Heckinger's. Now I'm really in trouble. I'm sure he was of age. Lawyers for Heckinger's, I'm sure he was of age. And he was a really good worker. And so he was bounced around the company, did a lot of different things. He was a switchboard operator, he was a stock person, but he was such a good worker that they elevated him to basically be in the outer office of the president of the whole company. And so it was the president's office, and then there was an executive assistant, and then he was the assistant to the executive assistant. And he tells this story, and it's stuck with me. One day, he walked in to deliver a message, and the president's door was open, and he looked, and there's this huge mahogany desk, completely empty. The only thing on it was a phone. And so he turned to the executive assistant, and he said, "Hey, I don't understand this. Why isn't there a bunch of papers and stuff on the desk?" And she turned to him, and she said, "Because he's the president, it's his job to think." And there's this thing, right? And so when he told the story, and he told it the day before I started the job here. Remember when I talked about the caliber of the team 20 minutes ago? You all are so good at what you do that I have had time to dream. even in the midst of all the meetings and all the things I'm going to tell you about in a minute, I have actually had time to think about revenue and to start dreaming about what we could do, and maybe more importantly, to start going out actively and set up meetings with people that I think can partner with us to bring these things to the finish line. That is a real gift. A real gift. And so I remember my dad's story because that is the gift that you have given me by being as good as you are. So that's the prelude, the preview to these 4 ideas. Let me also say this. These are not Rick ideas. I'm going to, for the cameras, I'm going to try to claim some credit for it someday. But these are not, these are our ideas. They're ideas that have been percolating for a long time, some closer than others. Gene, Josh, Linda Schott, there are a lot of people who I know have been thinking about these for a long time. Trustee Thorndike, Trustee Henyon. So here are the 4, in no particular order. 1, and I go back to the students, is energy transformation. Right now, SOU makes 8% of its own electricity on its campus. 8%. And the only reason we do that, I think, is because we have, as an institution, 1, listened to students who have been leading that charge for us, and 2, because we've committed to it. We have a sustainability office, right? We have people who are thinking about this all the time. So now let's take that and supercharge it. Imagine if we made 100% of our electricity here. If right now we are, like I said, we're at 8%. If we get to 100, likely within the next 10 years, we'll be saving about $1 million a year. And let's think about that. That's what we're not paying for anymore. That's revenue, right? We should think about that like revenue. And that's just internally. So kudos, and by the way, Gene's been in the trenches for a long time. This is harder than it seems, right? It's a no-brainer, but it's harder to kind of connect the dots and actually work on federal funding and other things that can help us with this. Everyone's on board with it. We just have to dot I's and cross T's, and that's hard. But it's worth, the juice is worth the squeeze on this. So we're going to keep going down the road on that. That's just internal. There's also a possibility down the road to work on with external partners. Are there other things that we can do so that SOU isn't just sustainable in what we do on campus, but we're actually becoming a provider for the rest of the community? Can we partner with the city of Ashland? Can we partner with Jackson County? Can we partner with tribal communities? Can we do these things so that we actually change the picture for the rest of the region? A region that already is a national leader. Right now, Gene's going to correct me on this, we talked about the internal stuff. Right now there are internal on campus energy. There are 43? There are 43 colleges or universities in the country right now that claim to be energy net zero. But the distinction on that, they do that by purchasing renewable energy credits off campus somewhere. That's still great, right? Kudos to them for doing it. By the way, those 43 are, the one thing they have in common, they're incredibly wealthy, right? Imagine if SOU was the first, it's going to be tough, we have a race on our hands with Stanford, but imagine if we were the first university in the country to make all of it on our own campus. Imagine the recognition we would get. Imagine the future students we would, all of it ties together. So I know it's bold, I know it's ambitious, but we're going to march down that road. Okay, so that's idea 1, and that's 1A and 1B. The second one has to do with Cascade. And there may be some people in here who actually lived in that residence hall, but we recently got money from the state of Oregon to responsibly raise that facility. So the question is, what comes up in its place? What do we put up in its place? One idea that's really interesting is to partner with an entity and actually provide housing for seniors, for senior citizens. Now, let's take that idea and now really walk it out to what it could be. So imagine this. Picture this. Picture a a residence hall, a living space, where now all of the residents of that facility are retirees with some, perhaps with some connection to the university. Imagine that as a part of their rent, they have access to all of the classes that we offer, right? There already is some Oregon law that allows them to audit classes, so it's not a big stretch. Now imagine that all of them become not just potential mentors for students, but sponsors. And by that I mean, imagine if, let's say we have a retired certified financial planner that plugs in with BCE, that plugs in with business students, and not only says, hey, I can help you with some of these things, but let me introduce you to someone from my old firm, and they're looking for talent. And now we're creating those linkages. And now let's go even a step further than that. This is a crazy idea. When you go into a hospital and you see a front desk, there's a retiree, typically, volunteer, who's there with a smile to help you when likely you are at your most vulnerable, right? Because you're either finding a loved one or you're there yourself. But there's someone with a kind, open heart that is there to help you. Those are all volunteers. Imagine if we formed an auxiliary at SOU. Imagine with every resident had an opportunity to form an auxiliary, and now on the first several days of every term, we're giving them red SOU polo shirts and golf carts, and they're driving students all over campus and taking care of them. Imagine that. Disclaimer. I am a 51-year-old man. That sounds awesome to me. But does an 18-year-old student feel the same way? And so this goes back to the caliber of our students. Every single student I've shared that idea with, it's anecdotal, we haven't done a survey, but I've talked to a lot of them. And when I share that vision for what that can be, every single student applauded it and said, yeah, we could see that. Kudos to them, right, for that. But they've also said, Rick, it would be great if at the same time you work with the city so that there are businesses open past 8 p.m. Right? That's fair. That's fair. That leads us, segue, into idea number 3. And that is the establishment of a university business district. And really working with the city, by the way, a city that's open to this, working with the city to encourage small businesses in South Ashland that really cater to younger students, right? And that one, let the students drive it, right? Trustee Piper, I'm going to give you credit that, hey, survey the students. What are the businesses that we want? That would be really interesting. And then here's the business side of it. We host a small business development center, and they provide marketing tips and business plans and all of it's a complicated funding model, but to the business owner, it's very attractive, especially to the small business, first-time business owner. So imagine if we built a facility, one of the options for this might be the corner of Ashland and Walker, right? Imagine if we built another living facility, because Ashland can use it, and in this, the second, third, and other floors would be housing that could be open, like condos, to faculty members, to nurses from the hospital, to teachers in the school district, to others who want to live closer to home and to their work. But on the very ground floor, we dedicate it to retail space. And we dedicate it to small businesses that our students lead the way in directing us on the businesses that they want. And we locate it there. And now, other crazy idea, we find a way, by the way, this might not work at all. This is just the idea. We charge the overhead so low that now business owners have a different calculation of risk. And so they are more inclined to take a chance and build this business. But now SOU becomes a partner, right? We become a partner in the business so that as that business grows, our profit grows, and we become a revenue partner in that. Idea number 4. And again, kudos to Josh for this. Tom Battaglia and his team are leading the state They are leading, our IT department is leading the state on a transition to a new platform that'll touch everything that we do. Because the one that we have used in the past is antiquated. There are other colleges, actually I would say a lot of colleges, almost everyone I think, certainly 5 of the 6 other universities, that are watching SOU because they are very interested in maybe following in our footsteps, but they're very happy for us to go first. Okay? Let's take it, let's embrace it. Let's embrace it. Let's us be the first ones to do it. But while we're doing it, let's also think about the establishment of a company that SOU runs that helps prepare future users for how to use it. On the heels of that idea, and this is like 2 days after I talked to Josh, I went to Tom and said, I want to talk to the Workday people. That's the platform that we're going to be using. And they were gracious enough to put me in touch with the person who runs all their training. And so I asked the question, hey, what if we started a company and what if we started teaching other people how to use it? By the way, that same platform also, shocker, happens to be the platform that the state of Oregon uses and all 40,000 of its employees. So imagine what a company that focuses on training for this platform does. They don't do it. Workday doesn't do it. They do user configuration, the IT side of it, they teach that. But because all these different entities use it slightly differently, every entity kind of comes up with their own training plan on its own as they implement. So imagine if we had a company that did that work for new users, especially with the lessons that we learn at SOU. We've talked about how we use the Higher Education Center in Medford. What better place to do this kind of work than there, right? And make Southern Oregon not just a training hub for the region, make it the training hub for the Pacific Northwest and bring outside dollars into Southern Oregon, right? These are all, this was 3.5 months I've been here, and these are 4 really good ideas. And again, ideas that now we're starting to put some detail to because of how good everyone is at what you do. I will continue to update you on these things as we move forward, but I'm very excited that even if we get one of these to the finish line, it will change our fiscal picture. 1. If we get more than 1, or all 4, it'll be transformative. It'll change everything. So it's exciting time. It's an exciting time. Okay, so that's 2. The 4-legged fiscal plank. 3 is grants, and we're going to own this. When the provost and I went around to meet with many of the faculty members, some faculty members were, and I'm just going to say it, they're disincentivized to go after grants. And it's because we can do a better job at the institution in how it's all managed. And so I want to say kudos to Greg and his team, kudos to Sue and her team, kudos to Janet and her team, and Taylor and all the people who are really thinking about how we reimagine support to grants. By the way, this isn't just for faculty members. It's awesome. Once we get this right, it's gonna really incentivize, but it can also incentivize student services and all other things, because there's a lot of federal money out there that if we're strategic about how we go after, it can help us do some of the day-to-day things that we've been paying for on our own. And then the last one is philanthropy. I will say when I started my last job, and certainly before that, 24 years in the Air Force, outside of a candy bar sale, like I never asked people for money. That was it. But I will tell you that there is so much interest in this community and so much interest in the region for this university. And without getting everyone overexcited, I will say that we are on the precipice of a revolution in how we think philanthropically about this place. It's going to be that dramatic. This wouldn't happen if we didn't have this incredible team at the foundation. Incredible. And they spend day and night thinking about how they can support all of you better. And that's a gift. And by the way, that's contagious. That enthusiasm is contagious. And our donors are seeing it. Donors, alumni, and others. We are going to supercharge that. Now, the question is, what do we do with those dollars? And obviously, the donors tell us. But one of the things that I would love, and I think we're leaning this way, is that philanthropy is always great about facilities, and we should honor that and celebrate that. But we should also explore options to use philanthropy to invest in people, right? And we start thinking about endowed faculty positions, endowed chairs, all these other things. Now, that changes the fiscal picture for the institution. So the more we do that kind of work in philanthropy, the better. And we have the right people on the team to do it. Okay, let me take a moment and talk about JEDI. You've heard the acronym? Justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. Everything I've said since I got up on this stage, everything I've said on this stage, we are going to be intentional about all of these initiatives using that equity, diversity, inclusion lens. Right? So we should think about this like a tapestry. All of these initiatives that we've been talking about. How do we infuse the principles that all of us hold dear and actually build them into the design of all of these initiatives? By the way, we're doing it. We're doing it currently. All of the revenue ideas, all of the philanthropic ideas, all of them are designed with that lens. And if we are intentional about how we do that, then we are going to stop only talking about EDI, and we're going to walk the walk. And I'm confident. By the way, I'm very confident and I could not ask for a better guide and mentor than Dr. Cooper, because she is helping us with that design. And again, this is one of those things that it's not Toya alone, that all of us have to do that. All of us have to do that. I'm convinced, I'm confident that as we continue to build that tapestry, then the outcomes from all of these initiatives will help us to realize the objectives and uphold the principles that all of us hold dear in that space. Does everyone understand that? Okay. I practiced that line with Toya 3 times and I probably butchered it. Okay. Outreach. I'm using a cheat sheet on this one. In the absence of an executive assistant, everyone else has partnered to help out. So Patrick and Susan and Tammy and many members of the cabinet, and all of them have been so gracious to manipulate my schedule. So it's been nutty. But just in the last couple of months, I've had the pleasure to meet with Governor Brown. I've had the pleasure to meet with the higher education, with the HEC. I've had a coordinating committee. With the Oregon Council of Presidents, with the Oregon Community College Association, with both the Ashland and Medford Chambers of Commerce, with several public school superintendents, with Southern Oregon Economic Development, so ready, with the Rogue Workforce Partnership, with alumni, with donors, with the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, with the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, and 2 conference commissioners. Not to mention Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, Congressman Bentz. And every time we've engaged on something, there's been an opportunity to do something else. When Jean and I went to Washington to advocate for federal money for solar, Jean got her undergraduate degree at Georgetown. I got my PhD there. So while we were there, and Jennifer at the foundation has some Georgetown background, we just set up a meeting with with Jack DeGioia, who's the president of Georgetown. He was gracious enough to meet with us. So when we were with him, we were like, hey, is there a way for us to partner? And maybe we can connect our sustainability offices, and maybe there's an opportunity for faculty involvement. By the way, Vince is very gracious. Faculty don't love when university presidents say, hey, here's all these things that we can start doing curriculum-wise. That is not cool. So all of these things are really just offers. If we want to do that, here's an offer, but absolutely up to everyone else to take advantage of it. All of these have been really intentional. Also, while we were in DC, we met with, thanks to Mike Beagle and a couple other folks, we set up a Raider rendezvous in DC, first time ever. And I don't know, 24 people or so showed up for that, who are all in the National Capital Region. And by the way, we've already started connecting them with current students who are interested in jobs out there. And that there's no better mentorship than something like that, no better sponsorship than something like that. All of those partnerships matter. All of that outreach matters. But then here's the work in progress. And by the way, I'm almost done. Here's the work in progress. I want to be very intentional about how we communicate with each other and the things that we do with each other. And so I started a monthly video series. For those of you who have watched all of them and watched them from start to finish, I probably owe you a lunch or something for putting up with that. It's an opportunity really to speak to the larger community. So on the student front, we have a president's podcast. It really should be called the Nash Bennett podcast. He's the student who is so gracious enough to host this thing. It just happens that I'm the guest every week or every month. But the students really, it's a wonderful idea. They now, either through Instagram or Snapchat, they have a mechanism for asking questions directly. And then Nash just asked me during the podcast. These are questions that come directly from students. Obviously, there's the drive-by, right? There's the, hey, I'm down in the heck, I'm walking around, and we're having these conversations. At the Hawk. All of that's good. What are the other things that I can do for you? What are the other things I can do to communicate better with you? With two goals in mind. One, so that you're not blindsided, here are the issues that we're talking about. And second, so that, and this isn't just lip service, so that you have a voice in the strategic decisions that are happening at the university. What are the best mechanisms to do that? And that'll be a work in progress. And I'm excited for where we go from here. Let me finish with this. Do we have big challenges ahead? Yes, we do. President Clinton once said, there is nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed by what is right with America. So let me shamelessly steal that. There is no challenge here that can't be solved by the team in the room and the team online. I'm sure of it. I'm sure that we can solve these together. But it will take unity and it will take kindness. And by the way, not a shocker that those are the two kind of things that I've talked in the last two monthly videos. We have to be stakeholders in this. And when we start talking about things like enrollment and student success and fiscal health, those are not just the responsibilities of one person or one shop. Everyone. Now, granted, I know that you spend your day focusing on something, right, for this university. And that's great. But in those three things, I want you also to know that you are a stakeholder. And that the more we think of them that way, the better we're going to be together. And the other is kindness. And I know it might sound syrupy, and that's okay. I'll take it. But with what we've all endured the last couple of years, by the way, not just COVID, the fires, we can go on and on. All the things that we have endured, in addition to fiscal challenges and everything else. We need to be together and we need to be kind to each other because it's hard enough. And so I think when they write the history books, 100 years from now about this university, those are the things they're going to say. They're going to say they were really creative, but they did it together. And I'm really excited to be a part of that team. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I would love now, because I didn't do this at the beginning, for those of you who are online, Janet Fratello is in the back. She is moderating questions. If you have a question that you want to ask online, send an email. I think the email address is on there, and I think it is SOTU, State of the University, SOTU@sou.edu, and Janet will moderate those questions, and she'll ask. We also have some roving mics so that anyone in the audience can ask a question. There is nothing off limits, nothing. So feel free. And thank you again for being here.
So I've got somebody, Rick, back here. I've
Okay.
got a question for you. It's from a staff member, I think. It says, as we look to make budget cuts, how will we balance cutting student services and support programs, such as care coordinators, mental health support, et cetera, versus academic programs?
Great question. So let me answer it in a more broad way. There is no panacea. There is no silver bullet, right? And so that is not a question that can be answered off the cuff. Let me say this, though. Everything that we do and every decision we make will start with what's the impact of students. Every single one. And by the way, you can make arguments that anything that we think about in cost management, any student service, any academic program, all of those things affect students, right? So there is no low-hanging fruit. You've already done that. You've already done that work. Now it's very challenging, right? And so I will tell you that, one, there's a race, right, to try and work some of these other things so that those decisions are not as challenging. But again, it's a both and. Students will be at the core of everything that we discuss. And by the way, again, pledge, not in the back room. Questions that I will, and discussions that I will have very publicly. Okay. Anything else?
Rick, Mark here.
Hey, Mark.
Will the university take a look at a housing model that I actually personally lived through at Oregon State University, which was a cooperative living, where this building, we reduced the cost of living in exchange for work by those who lived there.
Yeah.
And that model still exists at OSU. And in fact, my son who goes here is doing that model right now in a living space where, in exchange for lower rent, does yard work. So if we got the building and we're talking about sustainability, sorry, Leon, you probably don't like that. But, the building's sitting there, probably needs a little upkeep, but let the students take care of some of their space and reduce the cost of living, which is a huge cost here.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. It's a great question. And so there are schools that have taken that idea all the way, right? There are schools where every student works at the institution and does something for the institution. My wife's aunt, Fabiola, who's turning 97 this year, she's going to be super mad that I just shared that. She looks much younger. She went to a school, and just coincidentally, that I moved here from. She was a student at that school. And she did everything from wash dishes to, mow lawns to pull weeds to you name it. And there are schools where every student does something like that. And we're already, it's almost like you planted the question. We had a discussion about this yesterday, right? The question is, what are the things that we can do to not to take advantage, but to leverage students who want those opportunities, and to find ways for us to to optimize, right? If there are students here for whom it is more attractive to work in a fast food restaurant than to work here, then we're missing an opportunity to do that. Now, how we design that better, I think, is a longer conversation because it's complicated. The other question is there money still left on the table in other sources, right? The VA is a great example, right? Are we leveraging VA funding for students who are veterans, right? All those things are on the table. And by the way, I think we're doing a very good job of that right now. But is there room for more? I think so.
Hey, Mark. Oh, it's on. Good. Okay. We talk a lot about tuition as it pertains to the institution, which is understandable because that tends to pay our salaries. What kind of gets lost is student fees and student fee funded programs. Do you have any, this is the first time I've been inspired by a State of the University address in a very long time. So do you have any good, any of your wild ideas for helping to fund, say, especially like TransCare at the Student Health and Wellness Center or the Social Justice and Equity Centers, things that are really, really highly student fee funded?
Fantastic question. So let me start with our ideas, right? Not my ideas, our ideas. And so I shared with you 4, but I bet everyone in this room probably has another one that maybe we haven't thought of yet. And so I'm not turning it back on you, but as we start thinking about those ideas, I would love that. I do want to say this to the Tuition Advisory Council and to the student group that actually goes over that. I have never, not just in my personal, I've never seen a more sophisticated process than we have at SOU in terms of how intentional that group is in every dollar that they're thinking about. And those are difficult decisions, but students are part of every part of that process, which is outstanding. The other thing that's not in your question, but I think we also have to address, is that the cost of living in the region, right? Because it's not just tuition, it's rent and transportation and childcare and food, all these other things that are part of the cost of attendance. So I think that's it's a work in progress, right? I think what I'm telling you is that, and what my pledge to you is, that we're not just going to keep blindly, and not that we've done that, but I've seen institutions do it, blindly just pull the tuition lever as the fix to everything. We're gonna start thinking differently about it. While we're on the topic of housing, there is, and it gets back to the majors question, right? Are there ways that we design the model differently so that students are actually stakeholders in the university in ways that they maybe weren't before? That Cascade project, or not Cascade, the Ashland Walker idea with the SBDC and the businesses and student. Imagine if, as part of the gig, students are actually part of those businesses, and as part of that, they're either living in the facility or so there's all kinds of other crazy ideas, and I guess this is the point. There is no too crazy of an idea, right? So I'm not just asking, I'm begging you. Please share ideas and please be creative and please be free to take the shackles off and use your imagination. Because to your point, and the night I went to the Hog, I got a question about trans healthcare, right? We need to be very intentional about making sure that as we move forward, that the students aren't losing the services that they really depend on. It's important, and there's a moral and ethical reason to do it. So we'll commit to that. Yes.
Question from somebody online. This is a follow-up to the student fee allocation model.
Mm-hmm.
So this question is about why are we continuing to add resources into new athletic teams and esports and minors when we could be potentially using those existing resources for other programs?
Yeah, so great question. Let's take a moment and talk about athletics. And I think I think we can say the same thing for esports. If we're not careful, we are going to, in the absence, I'll say this, in the absence of creativity, we are going to fall back on a scarcity mindset. And by that I mean, in a scarcity mindset, we start, and by the way, that's not an indictment on that question, because that's a fair question. But we will start thinking about it as everyone just protecting their cheese, right? And it's a zero-sum game, and so if they get that, I'm somehow being hurt. And we have to change that conversation. I invite all of you to come to the Board of Trustees meetings. They're very easy to attend, and you can attend online. And we talk about these things. And the board, and I'm not just saying this because they're my bosses and they're in the room, they don't let us slide, right? They're asking tough questions, like that one. Athletics, the new sports that we're adding, are bringing in a bunch of new students who, no kidding, otherwise would not be at SOU. And when you run the numbers on that, it is a net positive for the institution, right? So again, I'm asking you, try not to think about it as, because that's happening, money's being taken away here. Let's not think about it that way. Let's think about, what is this investment doing for the rest of the institution? And that's the way I want to have these conversations. Thank you.
I've got another question. Can you provide an update on the facilities or the campus houses that are on the perimeter of campus, the ones we're selling? Just an update on that process.
Okay, so we've sold 3. For those online, you can tell I had to look down to get the answer to that question. So we've sold 3 of them so far. That has generated about $1 million in revenue for the institution. Let me add a strategic answer to this. We recognize that as we sell properties, that's one-time money, right? So as we think strategically about how we move forward, I'll give you an example. We're not selling the Ashland and Walker property. Like, we're not going to sell that plot of land because we have plans, right? And the things that we do on some of those properties may have 30 to 50 to 100-year payouts if we're thoughtful about what we do there. So, answer your question, we're balancing, right? What are the things that we need to do? By the way, some of those facilities needed some love, right? And these new owners are going to come in and clean them up and actually make what I know the community there was probably hoping for a while. Anything else you'd add to that? Okay. If we could, there would have been a little earpiece thing, and I would have just repeated everything that Greg told me into his watch. Thank you. Anything else? So here's the other question. You don't have to answer it now, but think about it. My thought was that we would do these not once a year, that we would do these more often. I'm almost thinking like a Nielsen rating. I don't know if there's a way, Brandon, I'll have to ask you, and Mike, I don't know if there's a way to tell how many people we're on. But if we do this 3 months from now and there are 5 people here, then I'm gonna say, okay, maybe once a year. So maybe what we'll do is do another one of these this fall. And see if we can continue the conversation and more importantly, let you guide me on how useful is this, what are the things that you want to see, what are the things that you want to hear, what are the things that you want to talk about, and again, nothing out of bounds. Okay? Thank you all very much for spending this time with us. I very, very much appreciate it. Thank you all for what you do for our students and our university. It is an honor to be of service with all of you. Thanks very much. Thank you so much for the question.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
I meant what I said.
Thank you.
I'm Kitty Cable from the registrar's office.
And soon to be my boss. Yeah. And by the way,